What is going on, everybody? Welcome into The Highlight, a business podcast for all the business people. It's only for serious people, and today I have a super serious guest on. We're going to share the highlight today with David Block, the founder of Previnex. And Previnex is a fascinating brand we've worked with at High Beam for a little over a year now, and the story's crazy, and I'm super excited to have David on the show. David, I could talk about you all day, man, but I'd love you to take 2 minutes and just sort of explain to everybody who you are, and then we'll jump into it, man. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chandler. Yeah, great to be here. This is fun. This will be fun. So, yeah, I'm many things, I guess. I'm a husband. I'm a father. Probably my favorite title is dad. I think I have two kids, a kindergartner and a 1-year-old who, by the way, he's on a 6-day streak of sleeping the night after not sleeping for about a year. So we are.
Let's go.
I'm in good shape for this podcast today.
Are they doing the back to school colds and things? Are they bringing everything back with them?
So my
to
kindergartner, the kindergartner, it seems like every week, this season especially, is just there's something coming back, a cough, a sniffle, and I've been getting texts. So because I run a supplement company, like I get texts all the time about, hey, what should I be taking, or what should my kids be taking, and I am getting like a high frequency of messages of like, my kids are getting sick all the time. So I think it's like a nationwide thing going on. But so grew up in Southern California, went to UCLA, scholarship athlete there, which was fun, and ended up moving to New York City. So big city. And then we now are in the Midwest, like Indianapolis. We relocated the company and personally, and love it out here, and just getting into winter. So maybe check back in with me in a few months on that one. But it's awesome out here.
I think the Indy winters are a little bit lighter than the New Jersey winters. If I had to take a guess, that would be my assumption. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure.
Might be a little colder, less snow. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Dress warm. It's all good.
So you said you went to school for you played a sport at UCLA. What sport was that?
Yeah, so water polo is I got recruited, got a scholarship to play at UCLA, and played a little bit, had some trips internationally representing Team USA, which was also fun. That was like basically my life when I was in high school and kind of getting out of high school, and but you realize water polo is not going to pay the bills at some point, so you kind of transition.
Well, we just need to do a better job marketing that sport. We got to make it the next.
I don't know. That's a Herculean effort. That's a Herculean effort.
The camera work. I mean, not to digress here, but too much. But like the camera work for going underwater is just. I don't even know how you would get that on ESPN. I would imagine that's pretty tough. So like we mentioned, you're the founder of Previnex, and I would love for you to just sort of tell us how in the world you went from water polo superstar on the West Coast to founding. Owner of a supplement company on the East Coast. What happened in there that made you want to launch that thing?
Yeah. So lots happened. So I think first high level, let me tell you what Previnex is, and then I'll back into how we got there, because I think it'll make more sense. So at the highest level, we make premium, clinically effective nutritional supplements that promote longevity, performance, and everyday health, and we donate vitamins to malnourished kids through our Get Health, Give Health program that started not when we launched the company. There's kind of a cool story around how that got started. But where I started my career, I was a research analyst covering the nutritional supplement industry. And so for many years, my job was to read clinical studies on nutritional supplements, tour supplement manufacturing facilities, meet with executives of supplement companies, meet with investors, learn about the physiology of what different nutrients do at a cellular level, and look at sourcing issues. I basically became an expert in all things nutritional supplements. No ambition to ever start a supplement company. But as I was learning about the industry, I mean, I think from my analyst days, there were two things that really jumped out. Number one was there was all this proper peer-reviewed clinical research that supported taking advanced levels of certain vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, omegas, probiotics, and kind of the correlation between that and like creating health and health outcomes. And that was surprising to me, Chandler, because I actually had a very negative bias against supplements. Like, I don't actually know where that came from, but I never, as an athlete, took supplements. I thought it was a waste of money. And then I'm reading all this research, and I'm like, man, if I knew this info, like, number one, why have I never learned this? Because this seems pretty important, like fundamentally for health. And number two, like, had I known this, what could that have done to my athletic career? but then it was like number 3. Now I do know this. So like, this is going to be an important part of my long-term, longevity strategy. And I'm crazy. I have like goals of breaking world records as an 80-year-old. And I'm like a long-term thinking guy. And so it's like, all right, cool. This is going to help me with all that stuff. So that was jump out number 1. Number 2 was, in getting to know the industry really intimately, I realized pretty quickly, it's like, it's technically regulated, but not really. It's more of like a self-policing standard, which then opens itself up to many abuses and crazy things. And we can get into some of those stories, but it's predatory and exploitative. Like the industry is super predatory and banks on the fact that consumers are not going to have any background in nutritional science. And so if a consumer does not have a background in nutritional science, they literally have a 0% chance of understanding what ingredients are going to benefit them, what products are going to benefit them. And it just drove me crazy. I was like, man, done right, you can actually create health in other people's lives. Unfortunately, it's like not done right. And so I think it just, those kind of 2 things gnawed away at me. And there's a bigger story. We can certainly unpack it, but like, to keep it briefer than long-winded is, I think eventually I was just like, man, rather than complain about this, let's do something about it. Like, I know we can make best-in-class products, and but it was like, if we're going to do it, it's only worth doing it if it's just excellent, and we're kind of creating a new standard for how supplements should be manufactured, what consumers should demand. I kind of looked at myself as, I'm consumer number 1. I really believe in this stuff, given that background I had. And so what should I demand as a consumer? And so it started with like, well, if there's no regulation, like, why don't we manufacture this stuff and kind of look to the pharmaceutical industry, which is highly regulated, at least on the manufacturing side. And like, well, it makes sense to follow those same protocols of like testing every little step in the process, ingredients in the door, production run testing, finished product testing. And so anyway, what led me to start it was just my background as an analyst and just this desire to like do it right so we could create health for people and actually make products that do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like the perfect blend of that analytical background and the high performer goal driven background as well with the athletics in college. I mean, it's funny to me that I didn't realize you were a supplement doubter back in the day, and that you switched over to a believer. That's fascinating. I think I didn't know that about you. So Previnex it's just over 10 years old. Is that right?
So we'll be 10 in April. So
10 in April. Okay.
Rapidly approaching 10 years.
Yeah. It goes quick. What do you think about when you think back 10 years ago and when you started it and you think about today, like what are some things that stand out for you that maybe they're different, maybe it's not what you expected, or maybe it was a pleasant surprise?
Yeah. From where we are now versus where we were back then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, so listen, like any company, well, I don't know if it's any company, but like any entrepreneurial venture, you are failing as fast as you can to figure out what's going to work. And so the vision day 1 for Previnex, and maybe this could be the most surprising thing still, is we just had a vision of like, hey, healthcare is broken. We need to change healthcare, and prevention is really where things have to go. At least in the United States. I mean, the trends are definitely not our friend, and they can't keep going the same way, or you're going to bankrupt the whole system. So my thought was, listen, I mean, there's all this clinical data, and I know every company in the industry. Like, I know the whole landscape. Like, why don't we bring medical professionals, clinically proven prevention programs, weight loss, supplementation, and integrate it into traditional medicine? So that was like, I thought like, man, that's a good idea. And I don't see anyone really doing that and doing it well. So kind of that was Previnex day 1. And so I think it's something that's surprising is still to this day. And maybe it's not surprising because like doctors don't really get nutritional training in medical school. But it's just, man, how this stuff just isn't integrated into some core pieces of the healthcare process. I think part of it is it's just, again, it's predatory, and like consumers are super confused and practitioners are super confused. Like, what do I look at? What do I do? But anyway, we had to pivot. We're a totally different business. We would have gone out of business just sticking with healthcare professionals, but it's still surprising that there just hasn't been more traction made there.
Yeah, it's crazy to me that hasn't changed, because I've seen it online. I mean, with I mean, YouTube came around in what, '06 is when it launched, and now it's, almost 15 years later. So it would have been a little bit newer than when you guys launched Previnex. But I mean, that platform has really sort of leveled the playing field from a information standpoint. All of a sudden, information is everywhere for everyone. But I think back to what we talked about a minute ago, when you have a supplement industry that's so unregulated, and I saw this study the other day that Amazon, like, people ordered the top supplements off of Amazon. I got to find this and send this to you, actually. It's like they ordered the top supplements off of Amazon, and then they tested them, and then they found that, like, at a staggering amount, which is not going to come to any shock to you, they had none of the ingredients in them that they actually listed as ingredients that they were supposed to be selling, which is terrifying to me as a consumer, because I'm not in the space. I'm a marketer. And so I'm even worse about it, because I'm like, man, you look at some of these big supplement brands and you're like, well, you guys have a really good brand, and maybe the guy or the girl that's leading the company or the influencers they're using are they look healthy, and so, like, maybe I should trust them. But it's like, man, am I going to have to invest in my own clinical testing for every supplement I order? I mean, it sounds like I probably should on some level. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's super expensive to do, but I think that's where a Previnex makes a lot of sense, because, like, our whole thing is, let's just, like, integrity at the core of, like, products and testing and making our data available, and just almost designing and solving the problem that you're having. So, and Amazon, let me give you another Amazon. I don't even know if I'm supposed to say this or not, but we'll go for it. Is, we sell through Amazon. We've kind of just have our products up there. We've never focused on it, but we just reach new customers because it's a massive platform. We get an email every year going into the kind of summer months that say, like, if you have any inventory that is sensitive at 140 degrees, it needs to be removed from the warehouse. And so all of a sudden, any food product, any supplement product, like if you think of omega, like fish oils that have soft gel coating, I mean, we don't actually fulfill by Amazon because of that reason, because we have no control over the warehouse. Like, our facility's temperature controlled. We do fulfill by merchant. But all of a sudden now you're looking at supplements on Amazon, and it's the summer months. And if these things are in the 100 degrees and some humidity, I mean, you are getting massive degradation of product and nutrient availability. But you would never know. You just wouldn't know that. The product will look the same, but it's a totally compromised product. So there's all sorts of issues like this that consumers just have no clue about, because it's just not in their line of sight.
Yeah, I mean, integrity is what I'm hearing. Like, integrity is a big component of what's going to make any business owner out there successful. Like, if you don't have a core value that says what we say has to matter, and it has to actually do what we said it was going to do. I mean, I think about the example of, I literally just had a conversation with somebody within the last week where they wanted to buy services from us for marketing. And after the call, I just, in my gut, I knew it was too early. It wasn't a good fit for them. And that they'd probably work with us for 90 days and, we'd make some money off of that, and that'd be great. But after 90 days, they would churn, because their company wasn't at a stage yet where they were ready for the type of advertising services that we offer. And, there was a moment where you kind of have to look in the mirror and you have to go, like, all right, and it doesn't take that long, luckily, but you do have to look and you have to go, okay, we have agreed that integrity matters for our company. And so we're going to do what's best for our consumers, even though we're business to business and you guys are business to consumer. Like, it has to be what's best for them, because in the long run, that's really what matters. I mean, you just can't build a business, especially today with the internet and the way that reputation can be torn down in a matter of seconds. Like, I mean, cancel culture is a whole nother thing, but, like, I mean, it's still there. Like, you can be reviewed and your reviews can go badly and then nobody buys from you again. I mean, integrity has to be at the core of what you do. And I know that about you guys, but, like, why does integrity matter so much for you all? Is it because the industry is so ripe with fraud, essentially? Or is it that you guys you truly want people to live longer, better, healthier lives?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. First of all, kudos to you for, looking yourself in the mirror and saying, hey, what's best for the client isn't working with us. I can tell you, when we were early on in Previnex, some battle wounds or agencies that we partnered with that we spent a lot of money where it just was it's just a learning lesson, but
Yeah.
gosh, there were some of those. So that's great to hear. Yeah. I think for us, I mean, well, I think fundamentally it's like personally, just a personal philosophy of life is like, look, I orient around, identify as a Christian. I think like the serving others first and loving your neighbor as yourself. Like, how do you actually walk that out? And that informs a lot of what we do at Previnex too. I mean, it's like we are in business to create health for other people. And that is fundamentally why we exist. Like, we're wasting our time and everyone else's time if we're not doing that. And so I think that brings with it a high level of like, how do we do this with excellence at the highest possible standard to create the highest, the most flourishing and health that we can. And it starts with, it's like, well, at least philosophically, that's kind of where it comes from, right? And then all the outpouring of like manufacturing excellence and sourcing the highest quality ingredients. And I mean, even examples, like we have a product that is a killer product that we cannot source one of the main active ingredients. And we could certainly like dummy it down and put in a second tier ingredient and continue to sell it and bring in revenue. But we're just not willing to do it because if it's not the best, like we're not interested. Like that just doesn't make sense to us.
Well, it's the old saying, right? Like if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. That's really something that I think a lot about. You have to be long-term thinking. It's funny that you're on today and I know how big health is for you, but if you're not thinking long-term with your health, there's not much you can do if you're on the operating table and you're having quadruple bypass surgery. Like it's a little late at that point to start thinking long-term for health. You're now in emergency mode. We got to do some triage. We got to fix things right now. And so if you're lucky enough to be listening to this or running across David at some point and you are still early on and it's not actually gotten to that emergency level yet, you can always start today. What's the other saying? Like the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago and the second best time is right now.
Totally.
And, I think that, we all make mistakes. And you said it earlier too, is that you're going to be, you've failed a lot over the last 10 years and you've pivoted a lot and you changed and you stay flexible and you're humble enough to admit when you have those moments of fault and you just move on and it is what it is. But the guys that don't, you still have a long-term perspective on everything. I mean, all the way down to like who you are as a person to how you guys run as a company. I mean, that's why you guys, I think one of the reasons why you did the Get Health, Give Health thing, because you're literally now, and I'd love to talk about that program some and maybe some social giving aspects inside of business, because we've not talked to anybody about that yet. But that's even long-term vision to me, because you're looking ahead and saying, okay, if the world as a whole, if all human beings are actually the same and, we all are beneficial, we all benefit when everybody's healthier. And, the number of kids that die every year from malnutrition is appalling. And so you're getting upstream of all of that and you're saying, what can we do to make all that stuff happen? So tell us, how did that Get Health, Give Health program come around? And then I'd love to talk about social giving inside of companies.
Yeah, sure. So, so day one, it was, you got to be strategic about how you kind of think about the market and go after the market. And so we pivoted direct to consumer. We were lucky enough because of the quality of the product to attract like some influential people who worked with pro athletes or athletes themselves or celebrity trainers and whatnot. And so we pivoted direct to consumer, started the company in 2013. I'd say like 2016, we were probably all in direct to consumer. But it was a really hard journey. But day one, it was like, all right, if you can write the whole kind of roadmap for Previnex, where do we want to start? What's step 2? What's step 3? And one thing that was always in my mind was, man, if the vitamin industry itself is bad, the children's vitamin market is like the worst of the worst. It's like candy marketed as vitamins. And so
the Flintstone vitamins, right? That's what we all remember from growing up.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So part of it was like, man, like if you really want to create health, if you can start with children and develop great habits. And so kind of to go back to what you were referencing of like reactive healthcare versus preventive healthcare, like if you can educate children and get them going at a young age, like that's going to hopefully set them up well. So, yeah, but to your question, like in my mind, there was always, we need to do a best in class children's multivitamin, because that's that's an opportunity to create health in a meaningful way. So that was kind of always in the back of my mind. And I had some experience. So I guess where this program really started, a couple things triggered it. Number one, my wife and I have done charity work, and we love children. Like, we have a huge heart for kids. My wife was a NICU nurse formerly, and like taking care of critically sick babies and just being their advocate. And like, we sponsor children and kind of, I think, have a decent perspective on some of the challenges that like malnourished, impoverished children face. And we just have a heart for kids. So that's number one. Number two, our daughter was born. So 2016, end of 2016, our first child was born. And I just remember, like, it totally throws life upside down in some ways, like sleep patterns and adjusting. But it's the most amazing thing ever too. Like, it was just incredible. So I remember holding my daughter in my like one hand. I'm looking at this baby, and I'm just like, man, this is the most remarkable thing ever. Like, how amazing is this? But I kept having the thought as I was holding her of like, there are parents of that have kids just like my daughter who are going to lose them to things like malnutrition. And in the back of my mind was like, if we got to a size where we could make a dent there, that'd be really cool. But we were kind of nowhere near that size in 2016. And so, but I just felt this like, man, we've got to do something. So I started, step one was just research, was like, all right, let's unpack malnutrition. I always kind of thought of that as like a poverty, like distended belly, like food issue, not a nutrition issue, like a micronutrition issue. But I did the research very quickly. This is what I learned. And then I'll pivot it in is 17,000 kids were dying every day from malnutrition around the world. But up to 45% of those kids, it wasn't a food or starvation issue. It was actually a vitamin deficiency issue, meaning if you get them vitamins, they live. If you don't, they die. It's like, okay, hold on a second. It's 2016. Really? I know the business of vitamins. I know how relatively inexpensive it is to produce a very high quality children's multivitamin. Like, this is crazy, and we can do something about this. And so honestly, like it was a moment in time where I was like, I'm not even sure I'm going to continue with this business. I don't even know if we're going to make it. Like, we may go out of business. Like, it just was kind of a leap of faith, but I felt
that was year 3.
That was year 3.
Year 3. Yeah.
And I felt like, all right, you know what? We just have to do this. Like, I felt a responsibility. I felt called to do it. And I walked into the office and I was like, all right, guys, here's what we're doing. We are going to make a best in class children's multivitamin, and we're going to start donating it for every customer order. And so July of 2017, that program launched. And here we are, it's November of 2022. And we've donated 1.7 million Supervites to malnourished kids in like Haiti, Guatemala, El Salvador, Peru, Zambia, Syria. And one thing I want to say, because I think this is important if we're going to pivot to like social impact within companies, is for us, it's about serving these kids, right? And helping their flourishing. And so for us, like, it's not just drop vitamins, then move to the next region to get marketing copy. It's, okay, how do we partner with these kids so they're getting our vitamins day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, so that we can really invest in their flourishing. And then as our company grows, which we've been fortunate that it just continues to grow, we can then find like, what's the next region where we can make the biggest impact, but really partner with these kids so that it's a long-term human flourishing. Like, and it goes back to our mission. Like, everything stems from that, right? So let me just lay it out, because a lot of what I'm going to talk about is all going to stem from this, right? Like, we believe that creating health changes lives. In fact, we know that creating health changes lives. We believe everyone deserves the opportunity to flourish, and that at our healthiest, we can make our greatest impacts on our families, our communities, and the world. And so it's just, how do we help these kids flourish and long term, not just like dump and move, which I think a lot of programs do, unfortunately, which
well, that was going to be my follow-up question, is how do you walk the line between what's good and what some of the social giving aspects of things, and then also like the marketing of those aspects? Like, do you just avoid the marketing of it at all and you just do the giving on the side? I mean, I know we talk about it some. It's definitely like maybe 1 in every 100 social posts we'll put out. Like, it's definitely on the site as a way to promote it, but it's not I wouldn't say it's like a daily thing that we put, or we don't really use it as a lever to like like make people purchase your all's product, but we definitely make people aware that, hey, thanks for doing this and doing this for yourself, but also you're going to get it. You're going to help other people's lives improve across the world. And I don't know. Tom's Shoes was sort of the first social entrepreneurship capitalist venture. And that came from a good place. The guy went on a trip and, saw the kids didn't have shoes and then did the buy one, give one campaign. And that was awesome. And I think that was rooted in a really clean, intention. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it felt like after that, and that may have been around the same time, like 15, it may have been a little earlier. I don't remember the exact dates, but it felt like everybody was doing the buy one, get one thing, but they marketed it heavily. Like I remember you buy one pair of socks, they'd give one to somebody overseas. And then, it was everything, anything you buy. It was like buy a hat, give a hat. And I'm like, do people really need hats? Is that a thing that we're doing? I didn't know not having a hat was a leading cause of death and, wherever. So I just wonder, you guys been doing this for, this specific type of branch of the company since 17. How do you walk that line? Like where do you stand on that?
Yeah. I think fundamentally at the start, it's just what is the right thing to do and do that thing. And so for us, it's like, we're going to just donate vitamins. And yes, do we want to figure out how to integrate that into the heart of Previnex and who we are and why we exist? And yeah, for sure. Do we do a good job of that now? No. So I think we have an opportunity to be more on mission and tell that story better. But like we partner with charities to distribute the vitamins, and there are, part of it is we want some assets like pictures and stories, and because we think that matters and we want to make sure we're helping these kids. But there's markets we're never going to see a picture, we're never going to see a video. There's just a need, and so we're like, well, let's go there because if there's a need. So yeah, the way we walk the line right now is we do a pretty not so good job of telling that side of the story. I think the marketing teams identified like, hey, there's an opportunity here, but from a rooted in the heart of why we do it, not in the let's pull on heartstrings to try to manufacture sales based on the work we're doing with these kids. Like we'll never go there because I won't allow it to happen. And it's an interesting question of like, how do you toe that line?
Yeah.
And
what I'm hearing is intention, right? Like
that's what I was
what
just
is
going.
your core driver is intention.
Yeah, totally. It's just do the right thing, and that's what you need to focus on. And I think things work themselves out if you're leading from that place.
Yeah, I'm so this marketing company is my second business. Did you have another business before Previnex, or was this your first one? I know you
like a little investment thing, but I wouldn't even call that a real business.
Gotcha. Yeah, through that first one, and I'm sure it's the same for you, where you end up meeting a lot of other people that are entrepreneurs or small business owners in that same, $1 to $10 million revenue range. And we sort of all end up around each other because like we all have the same problems, and we can be like, hey, this is, we're not like the McDonald's of the world or the big Fortune 500 companies of the world. We have very similar problems. So you end up being friends. It's a very lonely gig, I think, being a small business owner sometimes. But I have found through operating two totally different businesses. The first one was a restaurant, which is direct to consumer, similar to what you guys did, but it was in a local market. And then this one is a B2B brand. Like we market to businesses and then we do their marketing for them. It's very meta and weird. But we've also gotten to meet a lot more business owners like yourself and other people. And what I tend to find is that 85% of business is the same. It doesn't matter what business you're in. And there's like 10, maybe more, maybe less core tenets that you have to sort of get right at an internal level. And, integrity is something that, especially on this podcast, that has come up a lot in the last 20 or so episodes that we've done. Intention and intentionality, and like, what is your actual heart and reasoning for doing anything inside of the organization, right? Like it's even if, it can go all the way from what you guys are talking about now with like, okay, we're going to do this social charitable arm, right? And that's intentionally, we're trying to do the right thing. We can always get it right. Everybody's going to message it right, whatever. But intentionally, we're trying. And you can even take it to, when you have employees on staff and stuff, it's like, hey, I'm trying to be the best leader I can. I'm trying not to take advantage of you. I'm trying to help work-life balance, and I'm trying to make the best thing for you possible. My intention is good. And I do think that where some people get into trouble. And, in the news recently, we saw the fall of the crypto exchange. What is it? FTX?
FTX, yep.
FTX, yeah. And so I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know what their intention was because, when you loan a sister company $10 billion, and that's a unfathomable number for me. But I don't know what the intention was with that. Like, I think the intention wasn't to make the best crypto exchange possible and help people with that new investment vehicle, whether your thoughts are on it. It felt like the intention was, I just want to do what's best for me and my friends and all the things. And like, it catches up to you. Now that's a massive scale and it's totally different than what we're doing, but it's like intentionality and, integrity are two big core tenets of business for me. Do you have anything else that you think about when you're like, hey, like if I was to come to you and I was going to say, hey, I want to start a new business, business number 3, because I'm just a junkie. Like, what would you tell me? Like, what are some other core tenets of being a business owner that you've learned over the last decade?
Yeah, gosh, I've learned so much, right? It's crazy. A decade, I couldn't pay any amount of money to learn what I've learned over the last 10 years. But I want to I'll answer that question, but I just something that strikes me is, FTX may have had great intentions day one. They may have had the most noble, but as you grow and you scale and money becomes much the bigger numbers and like it's possible to go off track. And so I think fundamentally for us at least, it's like really knowing our mission and our place and only executing out of that place. And so we veered left, we veered right, but like we've learned to like stay on mission and really understand what that is. But I think excellence, we have our core values and serve others first is number one. But like excellence, we call it fight for excellence because I think it's actually a fight because it is easy to give a B+ effort and it's easy to, take a shorter path but like really fighting for that with the intention to serve because we're serving other people. Like that's so important. I think things I've learned like truisms are like, hey, the highs are never as high as you think. The lows are never as low as you think. And that's something I had to adapt to. And I think grit, like I'll tell you a quick story, right? We're telling stories on this podcast. So I serve on a couple of different boards and there's a woman who I, at the time, was serving on 2 different boards with, who started the largest private investment bank in the media sector as a woman. Like 30 years ago, she started it. So think about 30 years ago, the culture, New York City, woman, different than today. Yeah. And, she is one of the best human beings I know. She has absolutely crushed it. So you go, she's on Park Avenue, New York City. Elevator goes up to her living room. It's the whole floor of this Park Avenue building. And
oh my gosh,
tremendous woman, right? So I remember the day Previnex turned 5, I walked in to the board, to whatever the board meeting was. And I said, she said, "Oh, how are you doing, David?" I said, "Oh, I'm doing great. We just turned 5 years old today." And without skipping a beat, she said, "Oh, congratulations, David. Only 5 more years till you make it." And I was like, what? I'm like, this is going to take 10 years. This is crazy. I haven't made any money in like 4 years. This is so hard. And that was just an interesting perspective. But then at her Christmas party, she throws these epic Christmas parties. We're by the kind of like the punch bowl, let's call it. And another entrepreneur buddy of mine, we were talking about like, what's kind of the number one recipe for success as an entrepreneur? And he gave kind of his answer. I gave a shorter answer. And then Wilma walked right up. We're like, "Wilma, we want to ask you this question." She's like, "Guys, this is easy. It's one word." She's like, "Grit." You're like, "Yeah, that's true." So just that ability, but smartly, right? Because like you don't want to just keep going and going and going, but like there is a grit and tenacity that's needed to just endure the what's inevitably going to be the ups and downs, the challenges, the setbacks, the failures. There's a lot of wounds that the entrepreneurial journey can give you. So I don't know. I mean, grit, riding it out, but being smart, right?
I love grit. I'll tell you why, because so when I was in the Air Force, I was in contracting, which is like the business side of the military, right? Everything in the military now is contracted out. Fun spoiler alert for you that pay taxes in the U.S. everything is privatized. And so people like me represent the Air Force and other branches, and we go out and find people. And so that's what sort of got me into business. Well, during this time, I had a 4-year contract, and I don't know about you, I'm not very patient. A lot of times I like get an idea and it's now time to ship the idea 5 seconds later. And that's why I like love having a business partner now like Austin, because he's a great filter for some things. And then God bless my wife's heart. Like she is constantly filtering out crap that I'm coming up with. And during that 4-year run when I was in the Air Force and I was stuck because you literally can't leave or they'll send you to jail, like military jail, which is a whole other thing. And so I had to stay. So I started prepping and I started studying because I knew I wanted to do something in small business and try to start my own thing. And so I'm reading all these books, and books are like great, but they're very hyper edited, and they're very concentrated from a timeline standpoint. So you may read a book that took somebody 30 years to condense down, right? 30 years worth of experience to get down to 200 pages or whatever it is. And I think I was too young. I was in my early 20s at the time. I didn't really understand time or anything like that. And then I'd also at the same time started watching shows like Shark Tank and any other business show they'd put on TV because I just couldn't get enough of that information because I was really in that phase. And those shows and those books are edited in a way to where the lows seem way lower and the highs seem way higher. Or more frequent, I think. I don't think they talk a lot about the day-to-day mundaneness that is running a business sometimes, because there's always a new challenge and there's always something else. But it's a lot of the time it's just the same thing. Like, hey, this morning I'm prospecting. I'm looking for new clients. This afternoon I'm talking to employees. It's just like, it's like learning how to do the same things over and over and over again. And just when you do have those bigger moments and big challenges that come up, for us, it's like, Facebook wants to crash itself. Like they want to spend all this money building a stupid metaverse and blow up the best marketing tool that's ever invented, and been invented. And instead they want to build the metaverse. And now my company is like downstream of that, trying to figure out like, okay, well, I guess we're going to figure out how to run ads on TikTok because Facebook's not going to exist in 24 months if they keep doing the crap they're doing. So, that is some grit to be like, hey, are we going to be willing to change, as a company and to pivot towards this new thing? I remember when I was running the barbecue restaurant, it's a protein heavy thing, right? We had brisket, we have pulled pork, we have chicken, we had all this stuff. And this was 2014 to our run ended in 2020. And, it's fascinating to me that during that time, it went from people are really cool with eating barbecue and it was fine to all of a sudden it was a lot more questions about, well, where are you guys sourcing your meat from? And do you guys have healthier options on the menu? And these are questions that we didn't have to deal with in 14, but all of a sudden by the time 2017 rolled around, it was like, well, I guess we should find answers for this. And you do have to pivot and you do have to have grit to just keep on. I think the 5-year mark is interesting for me. I think the SBA has a lot of data out there that says 5 years in business is sort of the make or break for a lot of startups specifically, and not startups that go get a bunch of venture-backed capital like per se, but like your mom and pop shop, like you're going to open a business, a lawn care business or whatever locally. 5 years is kind of what you got to do. 10 years for sure. Yeah, no doubt. But like 5 years is like most businesses that start have closed after 5 years. Cash flow is a big reason why. And it takes you about 5 years. Like you just said, like we're not profitable yet. And it's been 4 years. Like, what the hell are we doing? Like we started a business to make a profit, and it takes you 5 years of just grinding it out and staying alive and just committing to not stopping to actually get past that hurdle. So I'm proud of you for making it the last 5 years to 10 years. Our company is 1 year old, so I'm 9 years behind you, but we'll catch up.
One foot in front of the other. Yeah, I mean, so I think there's one thing to just kind of stay in the game, and then there's another thing to actually start to flourish. Mm-hmm. And I think her point was like, for 10 years you're kind of there. Like if you're smart enough and just can keep walking, and you kind of get there. Which, funny enough, I mean, we're going to be 10. Like that feels right. She was right on the money.
Yeah. I remember very specifically. So year 5, we crossed $1 million in revenue, and I finally had like a layer of leadership below me that was handling a lot of the day-to-day chaos and all the things. And other people were starting to be responsible for things that and I could go do what I actually wanted to do. And like some of the dreams and vision I had for my business, it took every bit of 5 years to figure that out. And I will tell you that if you've started your first business and closed it, the second one is much easier because you don't have to learn all those stupid lessons all over again. Like, so there's some data there that the second time around, if you're smart enough or not dumb enough to make the same mistakes twice, then it works out. I don't know.
And let me go back to your last question too, because I think something I would tell people, and we did this, is like bootstrap the business early. Because like had we gotten a bunch of money, I would have blown it on such wasteful things because I just wouldn't have known, you don't know what you don't know.
It's all theory. Yeah.
And man, like I'm so grateful, even as hard as it was to bootstrap and just sling along, like we would have, I'm almost positive, gone out of business had we had a bunch of capital and started to put it to work. And
yeah,
we could do that now very well, but we couldn't have done that well year 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've got a story for you. I mean, the first company I had was the barbecue restaurant. We started in a tent with $5,000. So we bootstrapped it. And then our second location wasn't the tent. It was a gas station on the side of the road next to a liquor store, next to an hourly motel. It was great. And then our third location was finally the location that we went over $1 million in, but it took, 4 years to get there, and we saved up a little bit of money and a little bit of money. And we finally borrowed a little bit of money to open that third one, but that was 4 years in. And we had been testing and changing the menu probably 50 times to get to that point. And like had we borrowed, like I had there was a lot of people that I knew that got a home equity line of credit on their house and opened a restaurant for $300,000-$400,000 because that's about what it would take to open a single unit white box build out in Lexington, Kentucky at the time. And, 2 years later, they're gone, and then their house is gone and all the things. And that ended up even happening to us because we had done so well for the first 5 years, and then we sort of got impatient. And I think patience and just playing the long game. I love the book Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. I don't know if you've had a chance to read that yet.
I love Simon Sinek.
He's awesome. Great. Everything he does is amazing. And I wish I had known about the Infinite Game before I made this bad decision, because I just got in a hurry. And then we ended up trying to open this. It was called Nash's Southern Table and Bar. And it went from being like a quick service barbecue restaurant where you'd come up to the counter and order and then go sit down, which is like basically one step above fast food, to Nash's we had 20 servers on at any time. It was a 250 seat restaurant. It was 5,000 square feet, and it was lunch and dinner, and there was appetizers and entrees and desserts, and there was a full bar. And it's like you're athletic and you can play baseball or water polo. And then all of a sudden I ask you to go run track. I mean, you can probably do better than the average person at it, but you're not even close to the world-class performer that people that focus on track is. And had we gone back and bootstrapped that next restaurant concept, we would have still been in business and everything would have worked out fine. But instead, we borrowed way more money that time, and it, like 4 or 5 months later, was gone. And that's, so I've lived both sides of that. And I will tell you that David is 100% right. Bootstrap it, even though it sucks in the beginning. It's going to suck in the beginning. You're going to hate it. Like, there's no way around it. You're going to hate bootstrapping it. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to want it to go faster. You're going to want to hit success. And then, if you can just have grit and patience, eventually, when you get to 10 years in business, you make it.
Yeah. And part of it is just figuring out, how do I stay in the game? And when you bring in capital and debt, that just, it just makes, there's more risk and less opportunity to, just less margin for error. And it's all about, how do I stay in the game, keep it going, learn as fast as I can. And yeah, man.
I love that. Well, the question we ask everybody on the show before we get out of here is, I call it the 10X question. So if I could 10X your budget tomorrow, what opportunities are you most excited about that you're just waiting on money to make happen?
Yeah. Oh gosh. That would be cool if you could do that, Chandler.
Yeah. Hey, if I win this, if I ever get that lottery that keeps going over $1 billion, I'll make it happen.
Yeah. No, I think for us, like where we're at now, so like the other side of bootstrapping is, we know exactly what to do to drive this thing. And so if we had just unlimited budget or 10X budget, a chunk of that would be going into podcasts. We have seen great returns on podcast marketing. Part of it is like we leverage trust points that reach our target consumer and we just have had success almost since day one doing that. So like podcast, we would scale that. We would probably go a lot deeper into paid influencer, the right influencer. And then I think, something that we'd probably strategically partner with the agency on a couple of things, like ambassador program, which we know can grow and scale. It's just, you can only focus on so many things, right? We're a big essentialism, like focus on the most important thing and drive that. But it'd be a few key marketing pieces and podcast, paid influencer, ambassador, and some agency support on some of the other stuff as well.
I love the leverage trust point thing, because I think whether you're in a direct to consumer business or a business to business model, I think it's the same, because people are at the core of both of those operations, whether it's one person or a big organization. There's a lot to be gained from leveraging similar trust points. So if you have a local barbecue restaurant, for instance, like we would even leverage the local barber down the street, and we would find a way to collaborate with them, and then, not just like a boring put gift cards out or something like that, but we would try to put an event on with them, and because they had the same customers we did. And so you're just finding a way to leverage those trust points. I like that a lot. And you can you can shortcut a lot of things and make customer acquisition costs much cheaper if you just borrow somebody else's trust. I like that. That's good advice, David. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. Is there anything else you want to get off your chest before we let you get out of here?
No, this is great. Yeah, you obviously are doing great work, and appreciate the opportunity to have this chat. This was fun.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you. We love having you as a client and a friend now. It's been fun. We get to have these conversations all the time, so it's cool to actually, bring it to the world and let them see what we yammer about when we're on the phone together. So we'll link up David's information and give some more information about Previnex and how you guys can support them. And the Get Health, Give Health program is one of my favorite things that we do at Hy-Vee Marketing with a client. It's cool. It's cool to support that. So David, appreciate you, man. We appreciate everybody listening. We will see you guys next week.